We light this chalice with these words: open our eyes to see what is beautiful, open our minds to learn what is true, open our hearts to love one another. Please join us in the affirmation of covenant, which you'll find printed in your order of service, saying, love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus we covenant with each other.
Some years of pastoral conversations has taught me that it is far more common than we're apt to admit or imagine to have an experience of radical disorientation from even small changes in one's life or circumstances, let alone the stark and dramatic ones that come from time to time. It is not something we talk about very much in public, perhaps because such radical disorientation shakes our sense that we have grasped important truths about life, about ourselves and the world, truths upon which our sense of self, of worth, of hope, of confidence and vitality all rest in some measure. Philosophy, the study of such important truths, is described as the love of wisdom. Theology has been defined as faith-seeking understanding. To live in hope, we seek to understand and be wise. And sometimes it helps to have a friend walk with us as we do that. What do you do if a million objects come to you? Breathe, find a friend, and find your faith. Faith is not belief. It is moving and being in the world in ways that are true to the values that you affirm and strive to live by. Faith seeks understanding of how life shapes our values and values shape our lives. Faith is about making choices and commitments. It is about finding truth and also about being true. In common usage, the phrase being true conjures the thought often of loyalty as something fixed and unchanging. But being loyal to faith and values involves both changing and not changing. We are unchanging in our commitment to live by the light of love, for example. And the more we live and learn, the more our understanding of what that means and what it looks like grows and changes. We are always finding out new truths about love, at least truths new to us or new in our experience, and at the same time staying committed to living it out to our best understanding. It's good to have a friend or two to talk to about our learnings, to listen, to witness, to support, to grieve, to celebrate. I'll tell you a story. It was Christmas time in 2003. I was serving as the interim associate minister at Neighborhood Church in Pasadena, California, and I had organized a group of carolers to go to sing outside members' homes, elders, shut-ins, folks we knew would like that kind of visit. I had the help of a pastoral care team who called all the families on our list to make sure they'd be home. figured out the route we would take, and prepared a soup lunch after church so we could all gather and socialize a bit before quickly organizing our carpools and heading out on our Sunday afternoon singing tour. Caroling in Southern California, by the way, is great. You might want a sweater, but there's no snow and no slop on the roads, and the sun is shining. At least it was for us that year. One of the people we visited was the mother of one of our middle-aged adult members. Margaret Holmes was in a nursing home. She had just turned 99. She was still as she listened to us. We weren't sure she knew who we were, but we had to believe our singing did her some good. The familiarity of holiday songs, the marking of the season, the joy of singing together. Something in this must have registered and brought some comfort. That visit was my only contact with Margaret. A few months later, I was giving her eulogy at the church. Her son Bob was someone I got to know pretty well during that church year. His wife, Mary, was president of the church's board that year, and he was one of the facilitators in the small group ministry that we started that year. And he had a real gift for it. Also, Bob had participated in a worship service that we did that year about adoption. We had some families with adopted children, and some of those parents spoke about their experiences. Bob's contribution was to speak, gray-haired, respected elder that he was, about what it was like to be an adopted child. Many knew how devoted he was to visiting Margaret, his adoptive mother, at the nursing home, so his testimony was especially moving. When I met with Bob and Mary to plan the service, he lent me a book of his mother's poems. Those poems were a big part of her service. All the readings were Margaret's poems. They conveyed as much about her as the memories that folks shared. One of my favorites is her poem, Musician's Song, which I think sums up why she wrote poetry. It goes, I will tend my olives and harvest my figs. I will tune my lute and sing. I will dance upon the pure white sand and savor all I can of my own life and earth's fertility. Isn't that beautiful? The first two lines of that poem with the olives and the figs and the lute recall biblical imagery, but in the context of Southern California, where people have olive and fig trees in their yards, it's only the lute that clearly signals that connection. And the next line reasserts that local context with the image of the pure white sand. Margaret wrote of tending, tuning, dancing, savoring. Southern California is a place where Earth's fertility, helped by agricultural science, is abundantly clear. The sense that one's own life, well cultivated, has equal potential for abundance is palpable. Margaret wrote another poem she called Child's Prayer. It goes, when I was a child, I used to pray, please keep me for another day. But if I die before I wake, I place my soul within his palm. But now I'm grown. I'm glad I've lived those other days. For if I die before I wake, I know I'll live in other ways. One way she lives, even right here and now, touching your life though you've never met her, is through her poems. Her children and their memories are another way, and if you should meet them, you will meet Margaret again. We meet powers beyond our own, like death, in our outer life and also in our inner life. Such powers often cause our experiences of radical disorientation. We encounter ourselves sometimes in surprising ways. Our own nature, the human condition, the equipment we have, body and senses, heart and mind, through which we experience and interpret and respond to life. Our own nature surprises us from time to time. Our inner lives are a field of self-discovery, self-culture, self-discipline, self-acceptance, self-forgiveness. And it's good to have a friend or two to talk to about our discoveries, to listen, to witness, to support, to grieve, to celebrate. Our inner lives are also a place where people we love live on in the ways they have touched and shaped us in our memories and even our dreams or our imaginations. We sometimes think of what a departed loved one would have said or done in a situation that we find ourselves in now. Grief counselor Alan Wolfelt speaks of grief as a transition in our relationship with a loved one who has died, from a relationship of presence to a relationship of memory. I find that an accurate description of my own experience, not only with those who have died, but with those who have been part of my life and have moved on in other ways. Old friends, old places I remember that in my life I have loved, some forever, not for better, as the song goes. Loving is sometimes fraught. Love is in some ways a force beyond our control, radically disorienting. And in some ways it is a discipline, a commitment, something within our power to perform. We both suffer it the way we do the weather. Emotions, I often think, are the weather of our inner lives. And we practice love in disciplined ways. At another memorial service I did long ago, the family requested a hymn that has stayed with me over the years. It's called "I Would Be True." Maybe you know it. I've often wished it was in our hymnal. In its first verse, the first part of each line names a virtue worth striving for within the limits of our own power to achieve it. And the second part of each line names the thing beyond our power that makes it worth the striving. So a virtue worth striving toward, and what makes it worth the striving. Here's the first verse. I would be true, for there are those who trust me. I would be pure, for there are those who care. I would be strong, for there is much to suffer. I would be brave, for there is much to dare. I would be brave, for there is much to dare. The second verse speaks more directly to the fact of our human limits. I would be friend of all, the foe, the friendless. I would be giving and forget the gift. I would be humble, for I know my weakness. I would look up and laugh and love and lift. I would look up and laugh and love and lift. And the final verse expresses the unity in human diversity. Who is so hurt I may not know his heartache? Who sings for joy my heart may never share? Who is so poor I may not feel his hunger? Who in the world has passed beyond my care? Who in the world has passed beyond my care? Just love that hymn. It sums up a life of faith so well. Faith is a way of moving and being in the world that is true to the values we lift up each week in worship. And that word, worship, means to shape worth. It is a collective spiritual practice of affirming and exploring the values of our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition that it's committed to, that we're committed to. And our tradition rests on a collective understanding of important truths about life, ourselves, and the world, truths upon which our sense of self, of community, of worth, hope, confidence, and vitality all rest in some measure. Faith seeks understanding and loves wisdom about what is true and what it means to be true. What will you do when a million things come at you? Breathe. Call me or a member of the lay ministry team and find your faith. So may it be. Amen.
Now for our closing words, please join me in saying our closing words. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And when a million things come at you, breathe and find your faith.
Can the lay ministry team please come up to extinguish the chalice? I invite you to extinguish the chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen, blessed be, and namaste.